Good day, everybody. Welcome to today's video. In today's video, I got my 2003 Jeep TJ. I'm going to give you the no nonsense, no BS, how to replace the master cylinder. What happened on mine is that it leaked into the vacuum booster, and I also had to replace the vacuum booster as well. However, that's in a separate video. This video is just dealing with the master cylinder. As you can see right there, it's been sitting there for years, and it's probably heavily corroded, and everything's going to be stuck to get out. So you need to invest in proper flare wrenches to get that apart. I'm not going to tell you are sugar coated because these are the gatekeepers right here. Those nuts can be really seized. The flare nuts for the brake lines can be in bad trouble too. So what I'm doing right now is just spraying some WD-40, and that's just going to act as some lubricant as I loosen things up. Like I said, proper flare wrenches and bust them free. At this point, we're not taking them off. I'm just breaking them free. And then you got to do the ones on the bottom as well. And the ones on the bottom are different sizes. As I found out with doing this master cylinder is that not all the nuts are the same. So make sure you have a bunch of different flare wrenches. That one down there is extremely hard to get at. There's not a lot of room. And if you bend or twist that line when you're trying to take it apart, well, you just opened up a bigger can of worms. So keep that in mind. So I got a little propane torch there, a little butane torch, and I'm just heating up the fitting because it's stuck. It doesn't want to come out. I don't want to heat it up too much, and you got to be careful because you don't want to cause a fire. So I heated it up, got my wrench on it, and nope, it is not going at all. That nut is just starting to strip. So at this point, I said, you know what? I'm just going to leave it. And I'm going to try to work around it. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to try to tackle the nuts now. Just looking at the new master cylinder. The new master cylinder is the exact same. So if I'm careful, I should not damage anything. So I'm just using a Midi-Vac right now. I'm sucking out as much oil out of the master cylinder as I possibly can. You can see the Midi-Vac down there on the floor. They work great. I put down a towel for any kind of brake fluid that is leaking. So at this point, I am loosening those nuts completely out of the master cylinder. And you are going to have some brake fluid leak out. So you gotta be careful. So now I'm loosening up the nuts that hold the proportioning valve bracket in place. And this is a process where you gotta loosen and then loosen the ones behind it for the master cylinder. I got one line off. And like I said, the other one down below couldn't. So that's as much movement as I have. Gotta be very careful. So now I gotta work on those secondary set of nuts, and I gotta do a little bit at a time, move them out, and I can push it forward, and then loosen them up, and then push them forward. That way I don't put stress on that brake line and end up breaking it or bending it. Like I said, you gotta have some patience. Right now I have some pretty good movement, and I'm in a good spot right now where I'm just gonna take everything off. And I'll be able to pull the master cylinder out. So all the nuts are removed carefully and pull the old master cylinder out. So I got a brake bleeding kit here for the master cylinder. And I just connected into the ports there and hooking up my lines. This is very important. You need to bleed the master cylinder. It comes with those little clips. Just adding some brake fluid now. And bleeding the master cylinder is actually really easy. So don't get too stressed out about it. So I got it filled up. I'm going to fill it up probably just below the add mark. And I'm pushing in the piston right there. And it's working the fluid through and pumping it back into the bottle. And that's the way we're getting out all the air bubbles. So we're not going to have issues later on. Once I'm done bleeding, I just put those rubber caps, and they do an okay job of keeping the fluid from leaking out, which is all right. So now I'm putting in the master cylinder, and I feed it in place. If you guys didn't know, there's a little rod that has to feed into the piston on the master cylinder. So you got to be careful that you do get aligned and everything's in place. I'm just double checking that the rod's inserted into the piston in the master cylinder, because last thing you want to do is put everything back together and you go to hit the brakes and there's nothing. There will be nothing. The pedal will just go to the floor and might go through your garage or something. So I'm just getting the nuts back on. And since that one fitting, remember I said that one line is C, so I kind of have to try to get that nut started and then work the rest of it together. But since I don't have a lot of movement, I got to make sure I get that nut. So what I'm doing right now, I'm not tightening them down. I'm just putting in enough threads that they'll stay and it's loose. So now you got to go through the painful process of tightening all those nuts. I'm just checking to make sure that gasket's on the back of the master cylinder, because if you don't have a seal between the master cylinder and the vacuum booster, you're not going to have vacuum and you're not going to have brakes. So I'm just tightening up all the nuts. That's all done. And then tightening up your brake lines. Make sure those are all tight, because if you leave one loose, it's just going to leak and it's going to cause more of a hassle for you. So you want to make sure everything is tight. And since I was only able to loosen 3, I am just tightening up 3, of course. Can be a little awkward depending on how much room you have, but it is what it is. So now removing the cap, we got to start the brake bleeding process. Since we disconnected the lines, now we have an issue with air in the system, so we got to bleed it. And you always got to start from the furthest brake caliper away from the master cylinder, which is the passenger rear. Start bleeding from the passenger rear. I like to pull a lot of brake fluid out because it's the longest stretch, and get all that old fluid out, and we're topping it up again. Put it up to the full mark, maybe even a little bit more, because you still got 3 more brakes. Then we go to driver's side rear. Bleed that one. And then passenger side front. We're bleeding that one. Can pull a pretty good vacuum. I'm using a vacuum bleeder. And then fill again with brake fluid. Make sure it's topped up. And then we're doing the driver's side front. And that's the last one because it's the closest to the master cylinder. And after that, top up your brake fluid and then test it out. So right now, I'm just testing my brakes in the alley, make sure they work perfectly, and they do work good. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If any questions, comments, post them below. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.